Hey, what's up, you guys? This is End Time Podcast, back with another episode. This episode is called 4 Dangerous Trends Watch Out For Before 2025. I want you guys to really pay attention and ask God to reveal anything that you're curious about. So I'm playing this from a video. They wouldn't let me upload the actual video. So just please stick with me and just listen to this all the way through. Thank you guys and have a blessed one.
2025 in Bible prophecy. Here are 4 trends to watch for. One of the key prophetic trends to watch in 2025 is the preparation for the third temple in Jerusalem. The significance of the temple in end-time prophecy is unmistakable, as highlighted in Daniel 9:27, Matthew 24, verses 15 and 16, and 2 Thessalonians 2:4.
Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 zeven. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And at the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. Matthew chapter 24, verses 15 to 16. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. The verses from Daniel, Matthew, and 2 Thessalonians interweave to create a compelling tapestry of prophetic imagery, deeply rooted in the significance of the temple as central to end times eschatology.
These scriptures reveal the pivotal role the temple will play in the unfolding of events during the final days. Particularly, the temple is identified as the site where the Antichrist will commit the abomination of desolation by desecrating God's holy place and exalting himself as God. This act of blasphemy is central to the prophetic timeline, and for it to take place, the existence of a physical temple is necessary. A third temple is crucial to the fulfillment of these prophecies. Throughout Scripture, there is a clear indication that the existence of such a temple will be tied to the end of the world as we know it. In 2024, the identification of several red heifers that meet the biblical requirements for temple sacrifices has sparked significant interest among both Jews and Christians. Evangelical Christians, in particular, view these developments as prophetic markers, seeing them as further signs that the rebuilding of the third temple is imminent and that Christ's return is drawing near. The preparations for the third temple are already well underway. The Temple Institute, an organization in Israel dedicated to the re-establishment of the temple, has been actively preparing for its construction. By 2025, this preparation is likely to become even more prominent. The Temple Institute has already crafted over 60 sacred vessels, garments, and other necessary items for temple worship, including the golden altar, the showbread table, and the high priest's headplate. These items are ready for use once the temple is built. The fact that these preparations have reached such an advanced stage should not be overlooked. The red heifers, the sacred vessels, and the growing movement in Israel all point to the eventual construction of the temple, a key milestone in eschatological prophecy. As we move into 2025, this is one of the most significant trends to watch, as the building of the third temple would mark a major step toward the fulfillment of biblical prophecy and the return of Christ. Trend number 2, increased surveillance. One of the most alarming trends to watch in 2025 is the rise of increased global surveillance and control. This trend finds its roots in the prophetic warning found in Revelation 13, verses 16 and 17, where it describes a future in which individuals will be required to receive a mark in order to buy or sell. This system suggests a level of global surveillance and economic control unlike anything we have seen before, where people's activities are monitored, controlled, and restricted based on their compliance with a totalitarian system. As we move toward 2025, this type of surveillance will only increase, and with each incremental step, people are becoming desensitized to its presence, accepting it as part of normal life. The groundwork for this system has already been laid, with the rise of mass surveillance technologies such as AI-powered facial recognition, digital identification systems, and biometric monitoring. These technologies, once seen as invasive, are now becoming commonplace, integrated into society under the guise of convenience, security, or health. For instance, facial recognition software is now employed in airports, on city streets, and even in schools. As this technology becomes more widespread, people are becoming accustomed to being watched and tracked. The normalization of surveillance is part of the larger agenda moving the world toward a system where every individual's actions can be monitored in real time. In 2025, expect surveillance to grow even more invasive. Governments and corporations are rapidly developing more advanced technologies to monitor not only people's external activities, but also their internal biological processes. Some global organizations and proponents of authoritarian control have been advocating for total biometric surveillance, going beyond mere facial recognition or location tracking. They argue that in order to better manage society, it's essential to monitor what is happening under a person's skin. They push the notion that it is not enough to track where people go or what they buy. They want to monitor individuals' emotions, body temperature, and even brain activity. This push for total control extends to monitoring biological responses in real time. For example, if world leaders give a speech, this future technology could analyze whether you're angry, frightened, or bored based on the biological cues from your body, such as heart rate or facial expressions, detected by your television, smartphone, or other connected devices. This vision of the future represents a system where political leaders and governments would know exactly who supports them and who does not, based on involuntary biological reactions. While we haven't yet reached this point, it's clear that the world is heading in this direction. The level of control envisioned here goes beyond traditional surveillance. It's about having access to the most intimate details of your thoughts and emotions. Further deepening this concern is the rise of neurointerfaces, which are currently being developed and tested by companies like BlackRock Neurotech, Neuralink, and others. These technologies involve implanting microchips into people's brains, enabling them to interact with computers and devices through their thoughts alone. While these advances hold great promise for medical and technological breakthroughs, they also introduce the possibility of unprecedented control and surveillance. Imagine living in a world where this technology is mainstream, where most people have microchips in their brains. Now, take that vision one step further. Imagine this technology under the control of the Antichrist. A microchip implanted in your brain could not only read your thoughts, but also connect to the internet, monitor your location at all times, track what you are doing, and even control certain aspects of your behavior. The Antichrist, empowered by this technology, would have near total control over the population, enforcing the mark of the beast as described in Revelation 13. People would not just be monitored externally, but their very thoughts and intentions could be observed and potentially manipulated. The world is moving rapidly in this direction. In 2025, expect to see greater advancements in neurotechnology, more widespread adoption of digital ID systems, and increased use of AI to track and monitor human behavior. As surveillance increases, so does the public's desensitization to it. Many people have already grown accustomed to having their devices listen to their conversations or track their location for convenience. With each step, people are becoming more willing to surrender their privacy in exchange for perceived benefits, such as convenience or security. As this trend continues, it will become increasingly difficult to push back against the encroachment of surveillance into every aspect of life. Another key development to watch in 2025 is the growth of cashless societies and digital currencies, which further enhance the ability of governments and corporations to monitor and control financial transactions. Once all transactions are conducted digitally, every purchase can be tracked, analyzed, and potentially restricted. This will enable a system like the one described in Revelation 13, where those who do not comply with the system are unable to buy or sell. Digital currencies will also make it easier for global authorities to enforce sanctions or penalties on individuals based on their behavior, political views, or religious beliefs. The trend of increased global surveillance and control is something that Christians should watch closely in 2025. The Bible warns us of a time when the entire world will be under a system of control, where people's activities, thoughts, and even their ability to buy and sell are regulated by a centralized authority. As we move closer to this reality, it's critical to stay vigilant and recognize the signs of its arrival. The normalization of surveillance The rise of biometric monitoring, the development of neurointerfaces, and the shift toward cashless economies are all pointing to a future where individual freedom and privacy are increasingly compromised. Christians must remain aware and spiritually prepared for these developments, understanding that the Bible has already foretold of such times. Trend number 3 increased: greed. One of the major signs of the end times, as described in the Bible, is the increasing presence of greed in the world. In 2 Timothy 3, verse 1 to 5, Paul warns Timothy about the behaviors that will mark the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, unholy, without love, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Greed, specifically the love of money, is at the heart of many of these vices. The Bible repeatedly speaks of greed as a characteristic of the end times, indicating that the world will become increasingly driven by selfish desires and materialism. In recent years, greed has grown more apparent on a global scale. America, one of the wealthiest nations in the world, has also become one of the greediest. The pursuit of wealth and power has driven individuals, corporations, and even governments to prioritize profit over people. Many of the wars fought in recent decades have been fueled by greed. Often, beneath the surface of geopolitical conflicts is a struggle for resources, markets, or power. War, in many ways, has become big business, with defense contractors, arms manufacturers, and corporations profiting massively from the destruction and suffering caused by conflict. For some, war means business is booming. They care little for the loss of life or the suffering of the innocent. Their only concern is the bottom line. The more conflict, the more profits. This is the epitome of greed, when human lives are sacrificed at the altar of financial gain. One clear example of greed can be seen in the pharmaceutical industry. The case of the EpiPen is a glaring illustration. Between 2007 and 2016, the price of a 2-pack of EpiPens rose from $100 to over $600. This life-saving medication, essential for individuals with severe allergies, was priced so high that many patients could no longer afford it. The result was widespread outrage, not just because the price hike was so extreme, but because EpiPens are not a luxury item. They are not like designer handbags or expensive watches. They are a necessity for survival. Yet, greed led to a 400% price increase, with the profits of pharmaceutical companies taking precedence over the lives of patients. This is a disturbing sign of the times, where even life-saving medications are subject to the insatiable greed of corporations. This greed is not only confined to industries like pharmaceuticals. We are also witnessing greed on a global scale, with companies outsourcing jobs from one part of the world to another to increase profits, often with no regard for the well-being of their employees or the communities they leave behind. This desire for greater profits, no matter the cost, reflects the kind of self-centeredness described in 2 Timothy 3, verse 1 to 5, where people become lovers of money and care little about the impact their actions have on others. The Bible is clear that greed is at the root of all kinds of evil. In 1 Timothy 6:10 it states, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." This love of money has infiltrated not just the corporate world, but also the church. The rise of the prosperity gospel is a striking example of how greed has even reached into spiritual spaces. Preachers who prioritize money over the spiritual well-being of their congregation exploit their followers, often promising blessings and financial success in exchange for generous donations. Some churches even go so far as to encourage their members to take out personal or business loans just to give to the church. This manipulation of people's faith for financial gain is greed at its most destructive, turning houses of worship into businesses. One of the most shocking manifestations of this greed can be seen in how some pastors live. Private jets, multi-million-dollar mansions, and luxurious lifestyles have become synonymous with some of these prosperity preachers. But is it really necessary for a pastor to own a private jet? The justification often given is that these jets allow pastors to spread the gospel more efficiently. But the reality is that such extravagance is unnecessary. Many of these preachers are more concerned with their own comfort and status than with the spiritual welfare of their flock. This is greed disguised as ministry. The greed we see in churches today is not limited to those who preach the prosperity gospel. On a personal level, many people in modern society are also driven by greed. This personal greed manifests in various ways, from the desire for more material possessions to the constant pursuit of wealth and status. People are no longer content with what they have. They always want more. This insatiable desire for more is a sign of the times, as Jesus warned that in the last days, people would become lovers of money and lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. 2 Timothy 3 verses 2 to 4. Revelation 18 verses 11 to 13 provides a prophetic vision of the fall of Babylon, a symbol of the world's corrupt and greedy systems. In these verses, we see merchants mourning the fall of Babylon because no one buys their goods anymore. Goods like gold, silver, precious stones, and even human beings sold as slaves. This passage highlights the depth of greed in the world system, where wealth, luxury, and material possessions are valued over human life. The merchants of Babylon weep not because of the loss of life or the destruction of a city, but because their profits have dried up. This is the level of greed the Bible warns about in the end times, a world where human beings are exploited for financial gain and material wealth is valued above all else. In 2025, expect to see this trend of greed increase. Greed has always been a part of human civilization, but as we move further into the end times, it will become more aggressive and more pervasive. Corporations, industries, and individuals will continue to prioritize profit over people, and this will lead to greater levels of exploitation, corruption, and suffering. We are already seeing this in the growing wealth gap, where the rich continue to get richer while the poor are left behind. This is not just an economic issue, it is a spiritual one. Greed is a sign of the times, a reflection of a world that has turned away from God and is now focused solely on material gain. As Christians, we must be aware of this growing trend and guard against it in our own lives. It is easy to get caught up in the pursuit of wealth and success, but we must remember that our true treasure is in heaven, not on earth. We must also be vigilant in speaking out against the greed we see around us, whether in the corporate world, in politics, or even in the church. Greed is a sign of the end times, but as followers of Christ, we are called to a higher standard, to be generous, compassionate, and focused on the things of God, not the things of this world. Trend number 4, the one world religion. Revelation 17 describes the great harlot, a symbolic figure representing a false global religious system that will emerge during the end times. This system will hold significant influence, deceiving the nations and aligning itself with the Antichrist to oppose true faith in God. The description of this global religious entity highlights its immense power and spiritual deception, leading many astray in the final days. One of the key trends leading toward this global religion is the increasing push for interfaith dialogue and religious unity. Initiatives like the Abrahamic Family House in the Abu Dhabi, which aims to foster understanding and cooperation among Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are clear examples of this growing movement. While such efforts may appear well-meaning, they reflect a broader trend toward blending different faith traditions. This sets the stage for a future global religion that will embrace all beliefs under the guise of unity and tolerance, but ultimately oppose the truth of the gospel. As this trend accelerates, the world is moving closer to the formation of a unified religious system that will play a pivotal role in the end-time events prophesied in the Bible. As believers, we must remain vigilant, recognizing that this global religious system will stand in direct opposition to the one true God and His Word.
Okay, you guys, that's the end of it. God bless you guys. And I'm going to start, posting more messages like this. The world needs to hear this. We need to get the world back to being normal. Even though God said ain't nothing going to be normal as we get close to the end times. So God bless you guys. I'll see y'all in the next episode.